Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Sinke. I am the Chief Business Officer here at Bittrex Global and the host of our video AMA Ask Me Anything today. And I am joined by PKT, and our guest is Caleb James Delisle. He's the lead developer at PKT. And Caleb, I hope I pronounced that correctly. So definitely
Perfect.
if I didn't. Okay. So thanks for joining us today. We're excited to be talking about PKT. We got a long list of questions here from the Bittrex Global community as well as the broader community.
All right, let's get into it.
All right. Well, actually, before we dive into the question set that I've got in front of me, we always like to start with your origin story. So every guest that comes on, we like to ask the question of when did you get into crypto? Why did you get in? When did you buy your first Bitcoin? What led you to participate in PKT?
Oh, it's a great series of questions because it brings up a lot of memories. So, I mean, my origin story with regard to networking goes even further back than crypto even existed. So the beginning of me getting interested in networking was 2006 2007. Basically, I was growing up in a town where there was only 56K dial up, and so while I'm waiting for the pictures to load on the websites I was going to, and I would look across the valley at the neighbor's house, far away, and I would think, if we could just point an antenna over there, then they could point an antenna at the next neighbor's house, and they could point the antenna at the next one. We wouldn't need these telephone companies that take ages to bring internet into the rural communities. So, fast forward a couple of years later, I mean, obviously Bitcoin came out, and of course, the first couple of times I read about it, I dismissed it like most people. And and then I started to become aware of it, and I think I got into the Bitcoin community right about the time of the My Bitcoin fiasco, where these anonymous people disappeared with all this money, and that was about the time that I became really actively involved. But then I was involved, I was uninvolved, and at that time I started a project called CJDNS, which is the first routing software, first decentralized networking software, where the aim is to make it so that the network will be secure, even, or will have security properties, even if some of the nodes in that network are adversarial. And that's a big deal. It's typical to have adversarial computers in a network, but what's not typical is to have adversarial routers. And so to be able to deal with routers that may be adversarial, that was a shift. And the point of CJDNS was to make it so that our hope was that we could make it so that individuals could own and operate pieces of internet infrastructure. And that has been the objective ever since. So CJDNS got started in 2011, and there was a period between about 2014 and 2017 when we kind of had the technology more or less figured out. It was proof of concept, but we pretty much understood what we wanted to do. But the financing aspect was not there. There was no way to pay for operating infrastructure. And so then about 2017, the Lightning Network became mature enough that we could think about actually building fast payment Lightning Network based infrastructure. And so that was where the origin of actually flipping CJDNS project into the PKT project began. I mean, I could talk all day about this, so I think it's better to go to the next question, and I'll elaborate this story as we evolve.
Well, we don't have all day, but we do have, half hour to an hour. So at least we got that from you. And I think you started to talk about PKT. The next question on my list is really about the background of the PKT team, how you guys got together, what's the skill set on the team, where you're located, how are you pulling all this together globally to make it happen?
Yeah, so obviously my skill set is really in networking, programming, research and development. I spent 7 years doing R&D for the French and European research projects, publicly funded projects. Obviously, my background has been in networking, encryption, and security, and I met some people around 2017, and their background is in entertainment and film. And we started talking about this idea of having an internet where people could own and operate their own pieces of the internet infrastructure. And so we got together, we talked about it. A lot of different ideas went around, and we decided that what we wanted to do, we wanted to build a fully decentralized project in the spirit of Bitcoin or Monero. We didn't want to have like an issuer that has all the control. It just didn't feel right for something at the scale of the internet. We felt that it had to be layer one. It had to be proof of work. It had to be something that nobody could just shut down. Because that's where we're trying to take the internet, is to being something that nobody can just shut down. And the internet is relatively robust at the core, but most of us only have one or two options for accessing the internet. So, you've got your cable company, your phone company, and that's often about it for what you have to get at your access to the internet. So, we feel that that's very wrong, and that these companies are charging too much, and they are also a social vulnerability, because it would take only a couple of phone calls to make a lot of people get cut off from the internet as we know it, and that's something that we don't want that to be a possibility. We want the internet to be something that can't be turned off.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more on that point. And what about PKT itself? What is the story behind the name? I know you talked a little bit about what you guys are doing, what PKT is, and how it started. But if you were going to explain it to somebody that wasn't in crypto, how would you go about doing that?
So the name, the name is pretty obvious. Is Packet PKT, but we also wanted to use a name that was also its ticker, just to keep everything simple. So when you search for it, you don't need to remember the name of the project and also the ticker, because the name is the ticker. Now, a little bit about Packet. Well, it's a Bitcoin protocol-based project, and that was important to us because we wanted to be able to share the open source software development that we do back to the Bitcoin community and the Lightning Network community. And we also wanted to have something that's very robust. The idea was we're breaking ground here on the networking side. When we have bugs, we want the bugs to be in the networking technology, not in the payment technology. And a lot of people are doing a lot of great stuff on top of smart contracts, Ethereum network, all of those things. But that's where you get into a lot of security risks. And choosing to build PKT on top of basically the oldest blockchain protocol, 10 years old, that was for us something that made the security story for Packet a lot more simple.
And when it comes to the future of PKT, and actually the recent past too, I think is really interesting. What have you guys accomplished over the last 12 months, and what does the roadmap look like for the next 12 months and beyond?
What we accomplished, we're listed at long last after bitter struggle. But now, so the other things, we've built a lot of technology, and we've built a lot of, we brought together a lot of people. So something to understand about Packet that makes it very unique compared to, for example, a blockchain where everything is kind of issued by one company, or there's like this big pre-mine, and there's a company that's kind of handing out the tokens. What differentiates us, we're not like that, but we're also, so there's no pre-mine, no investors, etc. We're not like some of the other projects that, like, take a Bitcoin, for instance, where the project evolves at the rate of open source developers doing work out of the kindness of their own heart. And we have a very robust roadmap, kind of like the centralized projects, yet most of that roadmap are things that will be developed by independent enterprises that come into the Packet ecosystem. So you take, for example, the Packet Cube, and a product that's sold by Packet Pal company. That is basically a hardware device that is part of the Packet roadmap, but that's a company taking the initiative to build that device and make that a great device. So it's on the roadmap, but there isn't a centralized entity that is going to just produce all these things on the roadmap. This is something that everybody can collaborate in. Another example is Wrapped Packet. There's the Wrapped Packet bridge of Obeya. This is developed by an independent company with an independent developer, and they made a way to put Packet, to wrap Packet, put it on the Binance Smart Chain. So this is how Packet, I like to talk about the Packet roadmap as if it were more like a city plan. There's things that are fundamental to building a city, like the roads and bridges and water and electricity, and those have to be developed by some sort of public development. But there's also the restaurants and stores and shops and services that exist that make that city what it is, and those are independent businesses building independent things. And so when we wrote the roadmap, we identified many of these things that can be built by independent businesses in the Packet ecosystem, because that's what we're building, is an ecosystem.
And as a follow-up to that question, one of our users asked specifically, so I'm just going to read this verbatim. What have been some of the most difficult challenges in your journey to this point, and how did your team pull together to overcome these hurdles? And I know one of them has got to be integrating with us, and we can definitely talk about that one all day, because I've spent a lot of time pushing our integration team to make sure that the PKT integration happens. It's really really great from my perspective that it got done, and we're pretty resource constrained given our queue. So that's happy. But aside from the integration, when it came to actually like building the tech stack that you have, I think that'd be where I'd want to learn more.
Yeah, I mean, on the technology side, obviously, all software has bugs, and there's always been an ongoing development and continuous improvement on the software. But for me, that's not really the hard part. I have a lot of experience developing software. Like that's pretty normal stuff. The things that have really been the hardest, I think, the hardest thing was that we started this project in late 2019, and for anybody who's been living under a rock for the past 4 years, we had a global pandemic immediately after starting the project. So that really kind of set us back, and not being able to talk to investors about the companies that we were seeking to start up, that those companies were going to exist in the Packet ecosystem, that slowed things down. Obviously, we had our share of people that were not really that helpful. I think that's kind of par for the course. I think that, like, on the technological side, everything was actually was the easy part. The hardest part was just dealing with the business aspects. And our team, I mean, our core, like, community members have just pulled together and really believed the vision, and stuck with this project since basically 2018 was when the discussions about Packet started. And the level of dedication from some of the core community members is just incredible, because we're here now, and through every up and every down and every setback, these people have stuck to the vision and the project. So I mean, I think that like, if you're to ask what is the way that we've overcome these things, it's just been through sheer stubbornness and belief in the vision.
And how does PKT plan to drive to mass adoption, or what are your plans around your position in the crypto ecosystem? And within that, how are you, and I have this on my list here, how are you going after non-crypto consumers?
Yeah. So the way that we aim to, so one thing is that because we've had so much time. I mean, I've started this in 2011, and a lot of the team got involved in 2017, 2018. So we've had a lot of time to think through what the plan is. And for us, the plan is that we're going to bring entrepreneurs. That's our first target, is entrepreneurs who want to build a better internet. We bring the entrepreneurs in, and the entrepreneurs will make wonderful products, and those products are what the regular person's going to buy. So be that product an app, be it a device like the Packet Cube, those are the types of things that we expect the end user to be using, that will give that's how they will interface with the Packet ecosystem. We don't expect a regular person, grandma, for instance, to be an internet service provider. That is something that we need to have somebody package that open source software and open source technology into a product that can then be used by that person. Now, that person has a difficulty with it, they have a support that they can call, all the things that you need in order to turn open source technology components and blockchain technologies into a product that everybody can use.
Can you tell us about PKT Cash and what the difference between a token and a Bitcoin fork is, as you mentioned on your website? I have that question in quotes here.
The word cash in PKT Cash, that's just a nicety. If you want to call it something other than just PKT or Packet, you would maybe call it Packet Cash. Now, the other aspect of that question is, what's the difference between a token and a real blockchain coin? Now, in the old days, it was only coins. First project was Bitcoin, second project was Namecoin. I have some involvement in both of those. But then, after Ethereum came out, then Ethereum made the possibility to create tokens, and tokens started to take off. And what makes a token what it is basically somebody just invents, 10 billion tokens, and then say, okay, anybody want some tokens? You can buy them from me. And that can be good. I don't want to say bad things about that, because you can do tokens for really good causes. For example, you could have a tree token, where whenever somebody plants a tree, they get a token. That you can do really good things using tokens, community tokens, tokenized property, etc. But the problem with a token is that it really lives and dies by its issuer, and the internet is such a big thing. It is the biggest single system that exists in the world that's human created, that we would need to have something that is that transcends a token with an issuing body that it's going to basically live and die by this company that registered in Switzerland or whatever. So that's why we definitely chose to go in the direction of like a Bitcoin style project.
And looking forwards at the crypto industry as a whole and a lot of the hot topics that are happening or being discussed right now, what's your team's thoughts on the future of both NFTs and the metaverse, and how you're going to interact, if at all, in those disciplines, if that's the right word? What kind of plans do you have to enter those spaces if you haven't already started on that?
So again, team, it's community. So we have a community. Some of our community are NFT owners. I am not. I can tell you what my opinion is of it. My opinion is that NFTs that represent real valuable property, for example, a tokenized representation of a bandwidth lease, and that's something that we're looking at getting into specifically, is tokenizing bandwidth between point A and point B. That's something that is very real. I do not believe in NFT artwork. Maybe there can be some value to remunerating the artist. I don't believe that the $1 million monkey is a thing. I think that that people are making a mistake. That's just my opinion. Now, the metaverse, I also don't really have very high opinions of that. I think it's Zuckerberg's trying to save his company. What I do have very high opinions of is called the Fediverse, which is a decentralized social network where there are multiple different servers operated by different people, and those servers are interoperating with one another in order to produce something a bit similar to Twitter. But not only does it have better moderation than Twitter, but it also has more free speech than Twitter. And so, it's sort of, it's the magical thing, because the moderation is better. There is less hate speech, for example, depending on what instance you get on. You can be on an instance where there's a lot less hate speech, but there's also a lot more freedom. And so I think the Fediverse has a huge future impact. And so if you want to talk to me, I'm on mastodon.social, always talking politics.
If you had to distill PKT's core values into a few words, what would they be?
Well, we need to keep the internet operating. We need to keep it free and open for everybody to be able to access in the world. That is of critical necessity in the next 20 to 30 years. And there will be coming people proposing to fragment and break up the internet, and we must resist that at every turn. Also, the internet should be owned and operated by individuals and small community groups. There's no reason why there should be monopolies that control people's access to the internet. National firewalls and these types of censorship regimes are abhorrent by design. And we need to have the ability of people to freely communicate amongst one another should be a sacred human right.
And for our final question, what is the best way that our community members or anybody watching this AMA can get involved with PKT Cash or PKT or Packet?
So if you're inclined to start a business, then that's something that I think everybody should do. I want to bring people in who want to come in and they want not just to buy a coin and then maybe make some return on investment. I want to have people coming in here who see the value to the world to make the internet decentralized, and who want to have a business and be able to make revenue every month and see the value in doing something for people in the world. If you're not a person that's interested in starting a business, maybe you're an open source developer, you can come in, and there is an institution of the Packet ecosystem called the Network Steward, which funds open source development. Open source developers can also, I really want open source developers to come in and make themselves at home. There are the chats, there are the community groups. You can find everything on pkt.cash website. Documentation, just, using things, talking about things, whatever, talking about the importance, going to your neighbor and talking about the importance of keeping the internet free and open, and why is it that we accept to pay $50 a month each to an internet service provider that is selling the same internet to everybody. They don't have 50 megabit for every person. They have only one 50 megabit line, and then they're splitting it up between people. It's called oversubscription, and it's how they rip the customer off. these are the types of things, these are conversations that we need to be having in order to talk about actually making the internet something that is owned and operated by the people.
Is there anything about PKT we didn't cover in this AMA that you wanted to mention to make sure our audience is aware of? And then after that, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the industry broadly and what you think is going to happen over the next few years, what we should look out for.
Yeah. Okay. So the really important thing about Packet from the beginning is the Packet Crypt bandwidth hard proof of work. We have created the world's first proof of work algorithm, which is bandwidth hard. So you'll recall, from the beginning, it was SHA-256 with Bitcoin, and then Litecoin used the S-crypt, which is known as memory hard, meaning that using memory you could mine faster, and then things like Chia, which are storage hard, and Packet Crypt is the world's first bandwidth hard proof of work. So you mine it using your unused internet bandwidth. And I touched briefly on this aspect of oversubscription, and oversubscription is an incredibly corrosive practice by monopolistic telcos. What they do is they buy X amount of bandwidth, and then they sell you X amount 5-10 times over. And then they're making money off of all these people using the same bandwidth over and over because they're betting that not everybody's going to be using the internet at the same time. The reason why it's corrosive is because the bigger that ISP gets, the more that they can oversell those internet connections, and the more power that they get. That's what causes ISPs to become monopolistic. That's why you only have one or two choices. Now, Packet Crypt changes the game because once you have people using nearly all their bandwidth or all their bandwidth all the time, now oversubscription doesn't work anymore. So while we're working to demonopolize internet connections, to disintermediate, so in context of like how Uber disintermediated the taxi companies, we're working to disintermediate the telcos. We're also making something that makes it so that their unfair pricing practices don't work. They have to price bandwidth fairly based on how much bandwidth you're actually using, rather than pricing it in accordance with their oversubscription scheme.
Well, I don't have another question on my list for you. I think it's been fantastic having you on this AMA, Caleb. So I want to say thank you for coming on and talking about PKT and everything else. And I think we all learned a lot about PKT. And in terms of the future, I'm excited to see what your next announcements are. Keep up with the adoption that you guys are building, and the next things that you start to participate in. And then for all those that are listening, please go to www.pkt.cash to stay on top of things, to learn more information. And that's pkt.cash. And if I haven't missed anything, I just would like to say thank you again for your time. And please extend our thanks to the PKT team.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right.